Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh, yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I'm super duper excited to introduce Mr. Anthony McKinney. I'm sorry, Mr. Anthony McKinney. Is that correct? I should have asked your gender pronouns. I'm so sorry. Fine. Okay, great. So Anthony McKinney is a 32-year-old Mississippi native that has always had a passion for people. Since he was young, he always thoroughly enjoyed sitting around the elders with his family and sharing life stories. He currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and believes that it is empowering and therapeutic for all to share their stories. He's got an incredible book on Amazon. I was reading a little bit about it. The book is called The Fatherless Child. Welcome, Anthony McKinney, to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Thank you. That was a great introduction.
Hey, it's your introduction. It's your story. Thanks so much for being on my show here. I'm really excited to get to know you and get to know your story here. So before we actually talk about your book or anything like that, tell us about your journey. What brought you to where you are today?
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's always like the biggest loaded question, but this is a motivational podcast and I can already feel your incredible golden energy. So let's
Thank you. It is my journey is very sporadic. So stayed in Mississippi, was raised there most of my life. I did spend 1 year away from Mississippi when I was about 10, 11. Then I ended up coming back to Mississippi. Graduated high school, made the obvious mistakes that a young 17-year-old going to college would make, and partied out of college a couple of times. And then I decided to move away, try college again. Still partied out of college, and got into a relationship when I was about 20. I got into a relationship. It was a very emotional relationship, like very emotional roller coaster type deal. We stayed together from my age of 20 to about 28.
Wow, that's a long time, Anthony.
Yes, we had a lot of breakups and makeups and all of this other weird stuff. And in the process of that, he wanted to move to Atlanta. I had this big speech ready about how I'm going to curse him out. I hate this man. And then I said, well, who said it's too late? We can be together and love each other. So I moved to Atlanta. I've been in Atlanta since 26. I've been in Atlanta since I was 26. Atlanta has been good to me. I've been able to achieve a few things that I never thought I would achieve since I don't have a college degree. And
what kinds of things?
Well, I have my real estate license.
Oh, heck yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. I have worked for a company that is known nationwide called Junior Achievement. And I was able to work my way up in that company where everyone had degrees and I was just a non-degree holding salaried person. I don't know. That was the Lord. That was somebody, higher power or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Magic. Yeah. And I am currently working with children as a tutor. I'm about to transition over to a flight attendant.
Well, that's incredible. I could totally see you doing that.
So yeah, I'm all over the place.
I could totally see you doing that. Wow, that's incredible. So you're going to be traveling all over the world, huh?
Yes, I'm going to have to come see you out there where you're
Come out to Cali, California, Los Angeles, Hollywood. So tell us more about what brought you to writing this incredible book of yours called The Fatherless Child, unless you're not ready to talk about that yet.
I'm an open book. We can talk about it. No. So it's actually funny. I was doing a podcast and the guy who ended up publishing my book for me, Chancellor K. Jackson, we were also...
Yeah, I interviewed him.
Yes. Oh, you have?
I have. I've interviewed Chancellor, yes.
He's interviewed with everybody.
I know. He's all over the place.
I aspire to be like him. But, we have a mutual friend.
Super cool dude, by the way.
Right. Amazing.
He's so down to earth.
He is. And so young. I'm like, what the... Where are you from? But anyway, we were talking with our mutual friend at her podcast, having drinks, and we were just sharing stories back and forth. And if you can't tell by now, I am a very interesting person, probably, because I've done a lot of things. And so he was just looking at me while I was telling one of my stories, and he was just like, you should write a book. I was like, what? It's like, you should write a book. You're very interesting. Your stories are very interesting. The way you tell them, they're interesting. You should write a book. So one day, just playing around, I was really bored. And I was like, I'm gonna type out a chapter and send it to him to see what he thinks. So I type out chapter one. Lost. It's basically the chapter one. I think it's like, I called it like "Lost My Innocence" so I can be her hero or something like that. Type that out, send it to Chance, and he's just like, "Yeah, keep writing. You're gonna do this. You're gonna write a book. We're not gonna let up off this. I'm
Wow,
doing
what an
everything for
inspiration.
free, and I'm gonna write this book. You're gonna write this book." And just wrote this book.
That's incredible. How long did it take you to write it?
It took me 2 years to write the book. So after I got past chapter one, I was good. But chapter one, it took like 6 months to write. It was a very emotional chapter. And then after that, kept it rolling. Chancellor stayed on me. He really stayed on me. So it took me about 2 years to write a book.
And how did it feel when you were finally done with it?
I could breathe.
Right?
I could breathe. I missed my first deadline, so I was just like, ugh. Then I had my second deadline. So I made my second deadline. And it did well coming out initially. So I was proud of myself.
So I understand you have a story to share, and that's what The Fatherless Child is about. Could you tell us a little bit about the book?
Okay,
Your
so I can tell it like this. So takes place in Mississippi. It's like, if you can imagine yourself being a first grade person in the first grade, right? You have a younger sibling in kindergarten, and y'all are spending the summer with your uncle. Kind of with your uncle. Your mom works in the daytime, so you're being babysat by your uncle's girlfriend. And there's a neighbor. He's a kid. He's probably like 13. He comes over occasionally and just like checks on your uncle's girlfriend. Eventually leads up to where he's trying to have sexual interactions with your younger sibling. And so then you naively say, hey, no, not my younger sibling. Choose me. Whatever you want them to do, I can do it way better. And you end up in a sexual experience with the 13-year-old. This is not in the book, but so I ended up in the sexual experience with a 13-year-old for about 2 or 3 months.
And at this time, how old are you in this book?
I'm 7.
You're 7.
I'm
Okay.
7.
Gotcha.
He's 13. For about a month and a half, we have this sexual experience where he's having sex with me. And then one day, thankfully, my uncle's girlfriend catches us because we're in a room that we're not supposed to be in. He had like a game room for adults, and no one was ever allowed in there unless he was at home. And so we get caught. She's scared to call him because my uncle at this point in his life was a very abusive man. And so she was kind of traumatized by his abuse. So she was scared to call him, but she ended up calling him anyway. There's a big fiasco blow up behind this. Your uncle rushes home, your grandmother rushes home, your mom rushes home. Everybody's like screaming and yelling outside at each other. And then your uncle fights a 13-year-old. And then the 13-year-old's parents call the police. You have to run because he's an adult fighting a child. And then
oh wow.
I went to school that next year, and it was a very, very traumatic year because I'm from a small town. Everybody knew. By the time I made it back to school, everybody knew what happened. And to other 7 and 8-year-olds, it's not like, oh, he went through a traumatic event. It's just like, he had sex with a guy. That's gay. And this is the 90s. So they said, that's gay. And that was just like, always defending myself. And then I had
so at that time, they didn't even see the traumatic part behind it. It was more like it's with the guy. It was totally irrelevant.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes, that's where we were stuck at. So every other day I was finding myself defending my sexuality, even though I really didn't know what sexuality was. And, third grade rolls around as a new girl that comes to school. Mind you, I go to school with a lot of my relatives. Like 90% of the school is related to each other. And so this random girl comes in.
This is still in Mississippi?
Yes, we're still in Mississippi.
Okay.
We're still in grade school.
All right.
So this random girl comes in, and we click. We just have an instant chemistry, like without even really meeting each other. We have a chemistry. Yeah. And so one day she asked me, because I'm a scared little shit. So she asked me, she's just like, you're cute. You want to date? And you know how back in the day you used to write the notes and be like, will you date me?
Yeah.
Yes or maybe. I had one of those.
Roll
She
up
gave
the
me
piece
one
of
those.
paper.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
origami style. She
yeah,
folded it
origami style.
she folded it like 6,000 times. I finally opened up the Da Vinci paper.
Yeah.
And I said yes. And everybody, when I tell this story, everybody's just like, you were in the third grade. That's so young. How can you know it was love? And third grade, you're right. I don't probably know it was love, but we had a very deep connection that has lasted up until like now. We're still very good friends.
So maybe you're like soulmates, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I really think so.
Yeah.
We're soulmates that can't be together.
Man, that's beautiful.
But she was an amazing person. She taught me a lot about myself. I learned a lot about myself. And then probably about, I say about 5th or 6th grade, after I've created this love of my life story and I'm in love with my boo, we talking about children and all of this stuff, even though we're children ourselves. After school, I'm in about the 5th or 6th grade. My mom tells me, got a surprise for y'all. We're like, oh, yay, great. She's like, you're moving out of state.
Oh.
Like, what? You're going to go live with your dad.
Oh, my goodness.
And we were just like, me and my sister were like, we don't know him, though. Like, we've never spent more than 2 days with this man.
Dang.
And you want us to go? And she was like, oh, no, it's just for the summer. So my mom, she ships us off for the summer, right? The summer goes, my dad has 9 children altogether, but only 5 of us were allowed to go and stay with him for the summer. Mm-hmm. So it's 5 of us. You could imagine 5 children, one guy who's never been a parent a day in his life.
My goodness.
With a girlfriend who's never been a parent a day in her life. So we ran them raggedy for the summer. And everybody started going back home, except for me and my little sister. And we were just kind of like, hey, you said it was for the summer. What's going on, woman? School starts in like 3 days. And she was just like, me and your dad had an agreement when your sister was 1. And so I raised y'all for 10 years and he's going to raise you for the next 10 years. Devastating. Like that. Yeah, just like that. And she's like, she hung up the phone. She's just like, have a good life.
Oh, shit. So then, wow. Well, how did you and your sister react to that?
Oh, one of us, I can't remember which one of us it was. I think it was her. I think she cried for like 4 days straight. I was upset for like 2 weeks straight. I didn't speak to anybody for like 2 weeks. I was mad. My dad tried to buy gifts. He tried to get all types of things to win us over. And I was just like, you're not my mom. She's not coming to save us. This is crazy. I hate you all. No kidding. And so after a while, though, we did become adjusted to it because my dad had a very interesting career path. And so he was a very wealthy man. He was a drug dealer. He also had women working for him in the strip club. So you call that what you want. And he was starting a stucco business. So he was all over the place as well.
Man, so he had cash flowing in all different kinds of ways.
Yes, very much so. And so we stayed with him, started school. He bought us a house. Everything was going good. My sister and my stepmother at the time did not like each other. So my sister basically like told my mother every little thing that she ever did to her. My mom gets mad and her husband comes and moves in with us. So it's my dad and his wife, my mom and her husband, and the 2 of us. And we're all living in this house together, right? Super awkward, super awkward. My mom is trying to avoid my dad. My dad is flirting with my mom. My mom's husband is trying to avoid my dad's wife, but then my dad's wife is flirting with her. Super freaking awkward.
Awesome. Totally awkward. And you're just you and your sister are just both in the middle of all that, huh?
Oh yes. We played the 4 of them like a broken record. You hear me? Like we would bounce off of like, oh, dad said we couldn't do this. Let's go to mom. Mom said we couldn't do this. Let's go to our stepmom. Like it was horrible.
What about all your other siblings? Where were they?
They went back home. Their parents came and got them, and they were back in Mississippi enjoying their families as they did before they came. Mm-hmm. And so school rolled around. We got in school. My dad had us in extracurricular things. I wasn't able to do extracurricular things because I messed around and made a B one time. And my mom was like, he's better than a B. He can't do anything. So I would go and watch my sister do jazz classes, tap classes, hip hop classes. It was a very interesting experience. Very, very interesting experience. We went to a private school. And then, I mean, everything was pretty much normal as it could be, living with strippers, a pimp, and two
Yeah,
couples.
right. Oh
And so,
man.
like, holidays were huge because we have all of the stripper girls coming in with their families. We have the in-laws from my dad's wife, the in-laws from my mom's husband, all coming up to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Massive parties.
Right. Huge parties. Um,
Probably good food too, I bet.
yes, my mother was the cook though. Everybody loved my mother's cooking. She likes to make like food look good. And so I guess when you make it look good, it actually tastes good for the most part. She was amazing. She like catered all the parties. And so we lived there until about December. And in December, and this is where the book ends. In December, my father, all of his demons came and met him at the front door in black suits.
Whoa.
And they were called federal agents.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, they told us, like, hey, yeah, it's cute that y'all are staying here. Y'all probably should get ready to move. He's going to go to jail now. And so we moved back to Mississippi, and the rest is to be continued.
And so you're saying the rest is to be continued, meaning you're thinking of writing a second book about this? About
Absolutely.
Oh, excellent.
Absolutely.
Great. And then the second book will take you in from the time that the black suited guys came to get your dad into what's happening within your life right now? Or are there missing elements that you didn't put in the book that you're thinking of putting in a new book?
That's what I'm stuck at. I think I want to do it like, so with the new book, this is what I'm thinking. I want to have like a time jump between chapters. So I'm thinking I'm going to start modern day to where I am now. And then like an incident will happen and it'll take you back to like the first time something like this ever happened to me.
Oh, yeah,
and it will fill in the blank spots that were missing out of the first book or that were not included at all in the first book.
Almost like memories, like you're talking.
Yes, almost like memories. Yes. And so, but I don't know if I want to tell about my love story. I don't know. So I'm kind of like stuck. It's so crazy. Chancellor tells me after I wrote my first book, the words just come to me, and that I've written 4 more books since the first book in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. It's going to happen for me too.
Yeah.
I wrote my first book and then nothing comes to me.
It will. It'll come to you.
Like,
it already is. It's already coming to you. That's why you're able to kind of talk about that it's going to be about memories and stuff because it's coming to you already.
Well, I needed to come a little quicker. But yeah, there will be.
I noticed you've got some pretty good 5-star reviews on Amazon. So people are really liking your book. What do you think people are liking about the book? The fact that many people can relate to your story, or maybe that it's something they've never heard before, a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think a lot of people are surprised at how well the story flows. Mm-hmm. And I think they are also surprised to see such a, like you said, a young Black man expressing, or a man of color, even expressing themselves about such a topic. Because in today's society, you really don't. I looked up on the CDC, and 1 out of 13 male adults that you know have had some type of sexual trauma happen to them before they turned 18. It's even smaller for women. It's 1 out of 4 for women. But I was just like, you would never think.
It's 1 out of every 13. I mean, back when I was in school, I remember it was 1 out of every 5 men and 1 out of every 3 women. Unless it's changed and now less men are coming out and telling.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I really just glanced really quickly so I can have a statistic to throw out there on the podcast. Yeah. But that's what I looked at. That's what I found, at least. So
the statistic is pretty. I mean, it's pretty common, and not that many people are willing to come up at your young age and being, a person of color, to come out and just say, hey, this is what happened to me. So really thank you so much for your being brave and courageous and telling your story and with a
Thank you.
smile. I mean, it really says a lot about your soul and the light that you have inside you. So
Thank you.
keep sharing that because it's going to help a lot of other people open up too and share their
Right.
stories. And that's how people connect. That's how people stay together, you know?
Amen. Yes, yes. And you know what? Really made me want to write the book. You just don't hear about it enough. And then, but like you know somebody that's probably been through something
Of
similar.
course.
Um,
Absolutely.
especially if you're in the LGBTQ plus community. Almost all of us have been through something like that in that nature. And it's just like, it's crazy to me how nobody speaks about it and nobody wants to talk about it. But I
Yeah.
feel like that's how you give it more power if you don't talk about it, if you don't bring it to the light. And I also feel like things like sharing these types of stories could probably help hopefully reduce young suicide rates. Like
Oh, yeah.
me and a friend were talking the other day, and I was like, I don't know what's the most traumatic thing in the world, but I'm pretty sure from my experience, child sexual abuse is very high up there. Because I was like, I was reflecting on my life not too long ago, and for a very long time, any decision I made, I'm talking about any decision I made, it was based off that trauma and to some degree.
Yeah.
Like I always chose what I wore carefully, not to seem too flamboyant or not to seem, you know,
Just always finding ways that you weren't even aware, but you're trying to protect yourself.
right. Even how I build relationships with people. I either am very closed off, don't want to talk to anybody, or I'm like cling on to you and I'm like, we're best friends and I've known you for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Just like very unhealthy.
Right, right. But you started noticing these patterns.
Yes. And it all stemmed from my trauma as a child, in my opinion. And so I'm just like, I feel like we should start trying to share more of these stories to help it become less taboo and more common and comfortable for people to open up and talk about these things.
You also get your power back when you share your story because if you don't, you're staying quiet, you're leaving that power over there with that person.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
speak up about it, you're taking your power back. Hey man, this should happen to me. This is what I went through. You're speaking up for yourself. You're standing up for yourself.
Absolutely. And you know, when I was younger, so it's funny that you said take your power back. So when I was younger, and this has never been told. So this is the first time I'm ever saying this on your podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
When I was younger, I was probably about 19, right? And I know my abuser. I know who they are. I know like their family. I know everything. And I was like, I'm taking back my fucking power today. And so I went, don't laugh too hard. I slept with my abuser. To
At 19.
yes, to take back my power. And it did not. I felt so much worse
You felt
afterward.
worse. So you went as an attempt to be like, look, this time I'm the boss here. I'm the one
Yeah.
I'm gonna take my power back by coming on to you this time. But you
Yeah.
actually ended up feeling worse.
Absolutely.
Why do you think you felt worse?
Absolutely. I don't know. You know, I'm still trying to figure that out because the way I did, I was very mean to him. Went in there, I was like, you shut up. And then I was very aggressive and mean. And then when I was done, I was just kind of like, ugh. And I just walked out. And as soon as I like closed the door, I felt dirty and disgusting. And I was like, why would you do that? That is horrible. And I
Yeah.
think, you know what? I think what happened was it didn't have the reaction I thought it was going to have on him. I thought he was going to be like afraid and fearful and like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you wanted him to feel what you felt,
Right.
which is going to be
And
impossible because you were 7 years old.
exactly. Well, I know that now.
Yeah,
Now that I'm
yeah.
32, I know that. 19
Right,
gonna
right.
leave it
But I
possible.
can see, I think I've done similar things like that when I was younger, trying to get back at people, but what I'm feeling from this is you're telling me this, I'm feeling like maybe the reason perhaps you felt worse is because you just you were going back there because you were angry and you were hoping to alleviate anger, but in turn the anger kind of just came back up. And there's really you can't fight anger with anger,
Right.
so you can only fight anger with love, and that's going inward and loving yourself more and cradling yourself and going back to the past and seeing your little Anthony at 7 years old and saying, you know what, you did not deserve this, I love you, it's all good, I'm here to hold you and take care of you. And that's really what you needed at the time. And I'm feeling that that's most likely why you felt so terrible, but you still tried, and you got to give yourself some credit for trying to get your power back. But you know what, you got your power back. You have a freaking book now, and you're telling your story to the world. That's you can't get any more powerful than that.
Yes, sir. Listen, that's why I started writing the book and I didn't know why I was writing the book. And then halfway through the book, every time I wrote, I would like pray that this weight would be lifted off me. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I pray that when I'm done with this, I feel better. And it didn't happen immediately. But when I got my first review, and then I got my first phone call, and then I got my first text message, I was just like, I feel better.
Yes.
And then when I did my first podcast, normally when I tell the story of me being sexually abused, I cry. For the longest time, I cried. Like a tear would fall. I wouldn't be a boohoo crying, but still I'd get emotional.
Right.
And I don't anymore. So I'm like, I think this worked.
It is. It's working.
It's working, right? So I'm going to tell the rest of the business. So I can do it completely.
I mean, you're smiling and you're glorious about it, which shows that you definitely are healing, telling your story, and you're healing others, which is really incredible.
You know, it's something that I've learned, and it took me a very long time to learn this. A lot of depression. It took me a lot of depression to go through to learn this. But I learned that wallowing in your pain or your suffering or trying to play the victim and be the victim is very counterproductive to growth. Like for a very long time, since like when I was abused, my family had a decision to make. They could press forward, get my abuser incarcerated, and risk my uncle going to jail because his family was pressing charges against my uncle for fighting a minor. Or they could drop all the charges, nobody would go to jail on either side, and they could move on harmoniously. And my family, trying not to be confrontational, trying to think about everybody in the family, trying to do what's best for, I guess, everyone in the family, overlooked me, the 7-year-old, and they did not press charges against my abuser. And so I, every day for the rest of my childhood, had to see that man every day walk past my front yard, taunting me about what he had done. And so I never had that comforting moment of, oh, you shouldn't have been through this. You shouldn't have had this happen to you. We're sorry, blah, blah, blah. It was just kind of like okay, this happened. What we're going to do is not talk about it. Don't tell anyone about it. If anybody asks, act like you don't know what's going on. Keep this in the house. If you want to talk about it, please don't. And you'll be okay. You're going to get over this one day.
Yeah. And we all know that doesn't happen.
No, it did not. It calls for a very chaotic life for me.
I like what you said earlier, Anthony. You said that you had to get out of the victim mentality. So how did you get out of the victim mentality? Because once you are in that victim mentality, it's like a downward spiral from there. It's like you're always a victim. So how did you get yourself out of that and was like, you know what, I'm not a victim. I'm good. I'm strong. I'm stronger now. I'm not 7 years old. I can speak up for myself now. I mean, did you go through that, or do you still?
Did go through that? No. I went through it, but it wasn't me growing personally. I'll be honest. It wasn't until I got into the long-term relationship with my ex, and we were probably at like year 3, and we got into an argument. He was just like, "You always play the victim," and those words rang so loud in my head that I started paying attention to myself. And he was right. He was right. If something went wrong and I know I didn't do it to make it go wrong, or I didn't see my actions to lead to it to go wrong, victim. Oh my gosh, it happened to me. This was done to me. You did this to me. Any little thing, anything. I was always, my mother did this to me. My siblings did that to me. I was projecting off everything. Right. And then after we broke up, partially because of that, I started trying to not be like that. And it was a long process.
Oh, that's a very long process to get out of the victim mentality.
I would just have to catch myself anytime I'm like, oh, they're not doing this to you. You allow them in your space and this happens. Sometimes things happen. Bounce away, bounce back. Come on, you got
bounce away, bounce back.
So I had to tell myself that for probably like 2 years straight, honestly. So I say from 28 to 30, that's when I really got out of my victim mentality. Now, with my friends, with my best friends, I still will act like a victim, but they laugh and they're like, "Oh, shut up."
They're just playing with you, and you're playing.
Right? They'll play with me and entertain me sometimes, but for the most part, they're like, okay, chill out. You can't go back to that. And so, yeah, they keep me in check. And I'm very.
And then that's also you taking your power back, getting yourself out of that victim mentality. 2 years of that, like, man, that's some hardcore military stuff within yourself, like getting through that.
Who are you telling? That is terrible. Like, if you're a victim out there or you play the victim role in your life, I want you to recognize it right now. Listen to my voice. I'm very serious. Please recognize that and try to get out of it as soon as possible, because you don't realize that this is not, it's not productive to what you want to do. So if you have goals, you want to achieve things, you want to do things, you playing the victim is going to hinder you in some type of way. So please listen, people. Don't be the victim.
I love how you said that playing the victim will hinder you, which is true. That's all, and it becomes a repetitive cycle of continuously self-hindering yourself. Like, does that make sense? Self-hindering yourself?
It makes sense to us because we're having a conversation. We know what's going on. Yeah. Rewind and listen again if you need to, but it makes sense. Right. Go ahead.
Hey, Anthony, if you can go back to that time when you were 7 years old and you were a victim at the time and you were going through this stuff, knowing what you know now that you've worked through some of this stuff and that you're still working through it and that you've got a second book in the making in your mind is about to happen, all this incredible wisdom that you gained, what would you tell yourself? You could take a time machine and go back there to little Anthony.
I would tell little Anthony to be kind to himself, give himself grace, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty or shameful about what happened to you.
I love that.
I would have to tell him that.
That's excellent.
You're not going to make me cry.
No, I won't. I'm sorry. But I was picturing it as you were telling me that. I could picture yourself, like what I saw was like you kneeling up to him and telling him that.
So, yeah, that was my biggest issue with being a victim at that time. A lot of my friends were in my corner, but a lot of people didn't understand, and so they made me feel very bad about it. And I had my head down a lot, and I would just have to tell myself that, yeah.
That's beautiful, Anthony.
Thank you.
So where can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you if they need to get a hold of you and your book? So
the book is on Amazon, and thanks to my awesome publisher, Chancellor, it's now Goodreads as well. So you can order it on Amazon. It's called The Fatherless Child. I helped one of my friends or one of my old coworkers look it up today. By the time you type in most of fatherless, you should see it pop up with The Fatherless Child, and then it'll be Anthony. Click on that, and you'll see the book. If you have Kindle, it's free. If you don't have Kindle and you want a paperback copy because you're an old soul like me, it's $15. If you have a Goodreads account, it's also on Goodreads.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and that's where you can get the book. If you're looking for me on all platforms,
yes,
it is spud.speaks. So spud.speaks.
That's your handle, Spud.
Yes.
Spud.speaks.
That is my handle. Yes.
And that's also that's on Instagram, that's on TikTok, that's on LinkedIn.
Not LinkedIn. I haven't used LinkedIn in forever. Oh my God.
Okay. IG and TikTok. I'm gonna follow you right after this.
Yeah, it is my handle for TikTok, for all of that. Yeah, all my social medias. Please follow me.
Anthony McKinney, everybody, make sure you follow him at spud.speaks. He's on IG, he's on TikTok, correct? You're on TikTok as well. His incredible book, The Fatherless Child, is available on Amazon, on Kindle, paperback, and on Goodreads. Incredible interview. Thanks for sharing your love, light, your glorious nature, your beautiful soul. I'm really honored to have had you on a Little Less Fear podcast, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, Anthony. You awesome. Rock on. Rock on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure for sure. Thank you so much.
I'm not used to a nice, handsome young man giving me
all thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much. We're keeping in touch.
We are.
Thank you all so much for all the listeners, the viewers, the watchers, and the subscribers. If you have not yet subscribed, go ahead and do so. And please share the story, share this journey, share this podcast with your friends and your family. You can find information on my book, details about my book on my website at www.alittlelessfear.com, where you will also find my freelance poetry that I write. It's visual poetry with video for businesses. And for social marketing, if you are interested, please send me an email at alittlelessfear@gmail.com. Again, my website is www.alittlelessfear.com. And if you'd like to be on the show, you can also send me an email, or if you have any questions or comments, at alittlelessfear@gmail.com. Feel free to also check out my YouTube channel, also titled A Little Less Fear Podcast, where you will catch all of these episodes on video on YouTube. Thank you all so much. I love you. Thanks for your support. Take care and keep shining on. Rock on. I love you.